Hello everyone. Today in Gyan Darshan, we'll be deliberating on the role and responsibility of the Committee of Creditors and judicial pronouncement relating to the Committee of Creditors. The topic is very relevant because IBC is the most important landmark legislative reform which has come into the financial sector, which has really created a discipline among all the stakeholders. This has helped in creating a discipline among the corporate borrowers, within the bankers, a system which will not only ensure the continuation of a corporate entity, but will also provide a better value to all the stakeholders in case the stress is observed. To discuss this, we have our important presentation. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, this envisages market-led solution in the insolvency space driven by professionals and committee of creditors. To realize the objectives of this imperative, that all the stakeholders driving the process shall be regulated and follow the rules of the game threadbare. The code puts in place the creditors in control process for insolvency resolution of corporate persons. Under the code, creditors pursue resolution, evaluates the best resolution plan, and circumvents liquidation to the extent possible. Creditors of a corporate debtor act collectively to form a committee which act as the best interest of all the stakeholders. COC is the custodian of public trust during the resolution process. The COC acts in its statutory role and thus discharging a public function. The pain and gains emanating from the resolution of a corporate debtor are to be shared by stakeholders with fairness and equity. COC to apply the highest standards in functioning, duty of care, follow the due process, be fair to all the stakeholders, and also act in a transparent manner in discharge of its responsibilities. The IP who conducts the process also performs its duties under the guidance and supervision of the Committee of Creditors, which we are shortly calling COC. The role of COC is vital for timely completion of the activities and successful resolution. And you are pretty well aware that successful resolution of a stress in a corporate entity is in the larger interest of all the stakeholders. If an entity is kept as an ongoing concern, not only the financial creditor are able to maximize their value, but the other stakeholders like government is able to generate revenues in form of taxation. The employees are able to continue their employment and get their employment benefits. The suppliers get their dues and the market gets the delivery of the products. So keeping a concern as a going concern in the larger interest of the entire ecosystem. COC can decide to seek best resolution plan from the market. The resolution plan can entail a change of management, technology, product portfolio, combination of all the acquisition, disposal of assets, businesses or undertakings, restructuring of the organization, change in business model, ownership or a balance sheet, a strategy to turn around. There can be buyout, there can be mergers, amalgamation and acquisition or takeover, so on and so forth, whatsoever may be necessary to resolve the stress of a firm. The value maximization with sustained resolution requires the strategic and much beyond the restructuring of liabilities roadmap. The requisite time frame and the commercial dexterity of the equipment on the part of the members of the CAC is very vital for this. The basic objectives of this code of conduct are to elevate accountability and responsibility of the Committee of Creditors. to ensure transparent functioning of the committee of creditors, ensure decisions are made in fair, just and transparent manner, prevent actions which are determining the objectives of the IBC, ensure that COC is catering to the interest of all the stakeholders, strengthen collective action and raise accountability, prevent the members from colluding and with the insolvency professional. There have been judicial pronouncement which have established the supremacy of COC in finalizing a resolution plan for a corporate debtor. A very illustrious case is Shushriban case. In this case, the Supreme Court has defined that commercial wisdom of COC is supreme for deciding about the best resolution plan. The commercial decisions of COC are basically based on the collective wisdom of the committee of creditors. This has also been established in the Supreme Court judgment pronounced in the case of Essar Steel India versus Satish Kumar Gupta. The Honorable Supreme Court in COC of Essar Steel India versus Satish Kumar Gupta has observed that CSV has to take a business decision based on a ground reality by majority, which then binds to all the stakeholders, including descending creditors. The COC envisages an exalted status as the COC is commercial decision making, and even the adjudicating authority has limited role in approving the resolution plan approved by COC. This simply implies that the committee of creditors, who are basically lending institutions and the financial creditors, they are best placed commercially to take the right decision for a corporate entity, because this will not only prevent that company from going to the resolution to the liquidation, but will also provide the maximized value to all the stakeholders, including the financial creditors. So once they are planning a resolution plan which is in the larger interest of the ecosystem, then committee of creditor should get the supremacy in taking the decisions. Supreme Court in another case, that is Shashidhar versus Indian Overseas Bank, also has announced that court grants paramount status to the commercial wisdom of the COC without any judicial intervention for ensuring completion of the process within the time limit. The case, the Supreme Court, the Committee of Creditors of Essar Limited versus Satish Kumar Gupta. So in this case, the limited judicial review available with the Education Authority can be exercised only when the COC has abdicated its responsibility of considering the important parameters such as maximization of the asset value, that of the corporate debtor needs to be kept as a going concern, or the balancing the interest of all the stakeholders. I hope you are pretty well aware that the balancing the interest of stakeholders, the Supreme Court has also come out with a plan where they give them directions to the Committee of Creditors that you have to take the interest of all the stakeholders in mind, and this was deliberated into the various cases, and this was decided that to keep a concern going concern, it's not only the financial creditors whose interest is to be taken care of, the other stakeholders must be kept in mind while deciding about the best resolution plan to keep that corporate entity as a going concern. In another case, New Metal Limited versus Satish Kumar Gupta, RP and others, the COC is a creature of statute and instrumentality of the state. So the Supreme Court observed that this is not just a committee, this is basically a creature of the statute and instrumentality of the state. And what is the role of a state? The basic role of a state is to welfare of the people. So the Committee of Creditor need to take care of welfare of all the stakeholders who are part of the resolution plan, including the employees, including the suppliers, including the customers of that concern, and the government, which of course receives the revenue in the form of taxation if the concern is kept as a going concern. COC as a body is a new institution and continues its journey in bettering, evolving in its role in the context of value maximization and balancing of the interest of all the stakeholders. Keeping all these objectives in mind, the IBBI, in consultation with the bankers, thought that why don't we create a self-imposed discipline on the committee of creditors so that the committee of creditors act in a matter which is fair to all, where the interest of all the stakeholders is properly balanced and the prime objectivity of value maximization and continuity of corporate entity is ensured. So keeping all these objectivities in mind, we at IBA level had deliberated with the various banks, with the IBBI, and came out with a draft code of conduct and which was accepted by the IBBI. So I'll just outline few of the important aspects of the code of conduct. So a member of the committee of the creditor, while discharging its duties, shall abide by the following code of conduct as individuals and jointly with other members of the committee. The committee members shall maintain integrity in performing its role and functions under the code, must not misrepresent any fact or situation, and should refrain from being involved in any action that is detrimental to the objectives of the code. Must maintain objectivity in exercising decisions on the subject matter bestowed to the committee under the code. Committee of creditors must disclose the details of any conflict of interest to stakeholders whenever it comes across such conflict of interest during the process. The committee members should not acquire directly or indirectly any of the assets of the debtor, nor knowingly permit any relative of the committee member to do so without making a disclosure to the stakeholders. The members should not adopt any illegal or improper means to achieve any objectivity. The members must cooperate with the insolvency professional in discharging his or her duties in the court. The committee members should not influence the decision or the work of the committee so as to make undue gain or advantage to itself or its related parties. Disclose the existence of any pecuniary or personal relationship with any stakeholder entitled to distribution as soon as it becomes aware of it. The member should ensure that decisions are made without any bias, favor, fear, coercion, undue influence, or conflict of interest, and maintain transparency in all activities and decisions making. The committee members respect the mechanism, they should respect the moratorium, and the creditor who maintain the accounts of the corporate debtor shall not adjust the receipt of the corporate debtor during the CIAP or past dues in violation of the moratorium. Members, when they become fully aware of the provisions of the code and rules and regulation, it must have complete knowledge of the role and responsibilities assigned to it by the code. They nominate representatives with sufficient authorization to participate in the meetings and make decisions during the process, because it was observed that some of the cases, the people who were representing in the committee of creditors were neither having adequate knowledge of the subject or were not fully empowered, so the decision process were not getting in time, they were getting delayed. So one of the code what we have decided about the lenders is that they should be having adequate authorization while participating in the committee of creditors with adequate knowledge of the subject on which decision is to be taken. The members should participate actively, constructively, effectively in deliberations and decision making. Members should not conceal any material information or knowingly make a misleading statement to the board, the adjudicating authority, or any stakeholder as applicable. They should ensure that timelines provided in the code and regulations are not breached. facilitate the appointment of various professionals within the timeline prescribed under the code and the regulations. Cooperate with the insolvency professionals in seeking various approvals from the adjudicating authority within the model timeline prescribed under the code of regulations. The committee should ensure complete confidentiality of information that may receive or come across as part of the process at all times. It shall not share any information with any person who is not authorized to receive such information and without the consent of the relevant party as required by the law. At all times, respect the privacy of any information. The committee members are expected to take necessary measures to ensure that the insolvency resolution process cost is reasonable, keeping in balance the need to conduct a smooth and timely resolution process. The code also desires that members should ensure that their cost associated with the process is not booked as insolvency resolution process cost. Not withholding release of insolvency resolution process cost, including fee of professional. So they have to be paid in time, it should not be withheld. Adhere to the code and regulations in performing their role and functions under the code at all times. The members are supposed to bear the collective interest of all the stakeholders in mind in all activities and their decision making. Respect the demarcation of role and responsibilities assigned by the code to different stakeholders and shall not either directly or indirectly interfere with the functions of the insolvency professional. The committee of creditors is also expected at all times to endeavor to ensure that timelines prescribed in the code and regulations are adhered to. The members should not contravene any provisions of the code, regulations, instructions, guidelines, circulars issued by the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board from time to time. Endeavor to protect the corporate debtors as a running business and its assets and take necessary steps to protect the value of the assets of the corporate debtor. The members of the Committee of Creditors are also expected to extend interim finance to the extent required for completion of the process, because sometimes a corporate entity under stress may require some additional funding to keep it as a going concern. So if the Committee of Creditors and their members do not come forward and support that interim finance, then it will be very difficult for the insolvency professional to keep it as a going concern during this ERP process. These were some of the thoughts which I thought I must share with this audience group, because Committee of Creditors is now getting the greater responsibilities and is being viewed as a very important institution for resolution of the stress in a corporate debtor. A time has come when all the creditors, they have to upgrade their systems. They have to create resources who are well equipped with the knowledge of the IBC processes, who understand the time frame requirements, who understands the timely decision requirements, and are able to take proper decisions in the Committee of Creditors, which can definitely keep these corporate entities as a going concern. Let me share with you the broad perspective of a banker in the IBC process. After this IBC came into force in 2016, everybody was very circumvent what will happen to this code, whether this will take every running institutions into the liquidation, whether the Committee of Creditors will be able to perform its duty the way it is desired, because many of them were having apprehensions that when the consortium decisions take such a long time, how do this Committee of Creditors will be able to take time-bound decisions? But I must appreciate and compliment all the banking system, compliment all the stakeholders of the financial system who have evolved over the course of time, created this Committee of Creditor as an important and effective institution which could take very important decisions in a time-bound frame. Although the decisions, many of the decisions were not completed in the prescribed time limit, but still the time frame in which all these decisions were taken were much shorter than had it been gone to any civil court process or the normal judicial processes. So this code has not only provided a great tool for the financial creditors, but has also provided a great opportunity for those who are interested in acquiring and those who are interested in investing into these stress assets, because it provides a collective platform where with the collective resolution process, the entire entity, instead of going to an individual banker or going to an individual bank, a person who is really interested in acquiring a company can directly present a plan as a resolution applicant to the committee of creditors, and if that plan is found feasible, then it can provide a business benefit to the resolution applicant. It can provide and take care of the interest of the other stakeholders of the corporate debtor. One thing I must admire is more than the process involved and more than the force of law, this IBC has really brought a drastic change into the behaviors of all the stakeholders. Now a corporate debtor, with the introduction of Section 29A, now they are afraid that in case the decisions are not taken in time, if the conduct of the account is not maintained and they default, they may have to lose their concern. And with that, this has brought a sense of discipline among the corporate debtors. With this brings the urgency and the need to bring discipline among the lenders also for taking the decisions in time. If the decisions are taken by the committee of creditors in time, not only during the resolution process, but even before that, this can help a lot of important entities to remain as a going concern. This can really facilitate the economic growth of the country and can provide the ease of doing business in our country, which is the need of the hour. Because this is a time where our country is witnessing a great credibility among all the countries in the world, not only on a moral value system, not only on our digital technology basis also, but on our legal reforms also, which are creating this reform. And I think IBC is one reform which has improved the India's international rating of ease of doing business in the international world. So with this understanding and with these aspirations of the entire world, I think the entire ecosystem and the financial creditors need to play a greater and a very important role, and the committee of creditors should really become an institution of public faith in which all the stakeholders, including the operational creditors, including the suppliers, including the employees, believe that the committee of creditors like judiciary will be able to discharge their responsibilities in time with objectivity and balancing the interests of all the stakeholders. I hope this series will facilitate evoking a lot of response from those who are a viewer, and will facilitate and create a thought process among the creators also, that how do we reach our performance in terms of taking proper decisions in the COC to the next level. Thank you all for a patient listening today.
आगरा, एक ऐसा शहर जो दुनिया भर में मशहूर है। और इसकी वजह है ताजमहल। दरअसल आगरा का नाम सुनते ही हमारे जहन में दुनिया के 7 अजूबों में से एक ताजमहल की आकृति उभर आती है। या फिर कह सकते हैं कि ताजमहल आगरा की पहचान है। शाहजहां ने अपनी बेगम मुमताज की मौत के बाद उनकी याद में ताजमहल का निर्माण करवाया और उसमें उनको दफनाकर अपनी मोहब्बत को अमर कर दिया। आगरा का पहला जिक्र महाभारत के समय से माना जाता है। टॉलेमी पहला ज्ञात व्यक्ति था जिसने इसे आगरा के नाम से संबोधित किया। आगरा को सिकंदर लोदी ने सन 1506 में बसाया था। ये शहर सन 1526 से सन 1658 तक मुगल साम्राज्य की राजधानी रहा। दुनिया भर में आगरा को मोहब्बत की निशानी के रूप में भी जाना जाता है। बेगम मुमताज महल का मकबरा दुनिया की सबसे प्रसिद्ध इमारतों में से एक है। दुनिया का ये 7वां अजूबा पूरे सफेद संगमरमर से तराशा गया है। ताजमहल को बनाने में करीब 22 साल लगे। ताजमहल का निर्माण सन 1630 में शुरू हुआ और सन 1652 में खत्म हुआ। इसको बनाने में करीब 20,000 कारीगरों ने अथक मेहनत की। फारसी वास्तुकार उस्ताद ईसा खां के निर्देशन में ताजमहल को यमुना नदी के किनारे बनवाया गया। ये मुगल शैली के 4 बाग में स्थित है। इसके मुख्य दरवाजे पर कुरान की आयतें खुदी हैं। उसके ऊपर 22 छोटे गुंबद हैं, जो कि इसके निर्माण के वर्षों की संख्या बताते हैं। ताज की सबसे ज्यादा सुंदरता इसके इमारत के बराबर ऊंचे महान गुंबद में बसी है, जो कि 80 फीट ऊंचा है। अंदरूनी भाग में रत्नों और बहुमूल्य पत्थरों का काम किया गया है। सदियों से ये राज बरकरार है कि मुमताज को ताजमहल में दफनाया कैसे गया।
Hello everyone. The topic that is given to me today is insolvency resolution process cost. The purpose of insolvency resolution cost, we have to understand that what is this cost and how the cost is to be incurred. Under IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, uh, most of the bankers or financial creditors are coming out to file a petition for insolvency proceedings. Practically, what happens? Many of the creditors fear that how much cost they have to bear while continuing with the insolvency resolution process. So, this is a very important question, that how or when, in what way the cost is to be incurred. In many cases, the cost is not proportionate to the case. So, we will deal with all these factors, that what does it mean by the insolvency resolution cost. Basically, as an insolvency professional, once we are appointed, we undertake a lot of things in mind, that a company which is in insolvency proceedings has a lot of things, has particularly after initiation as IRP, after appointment of IRP, his own fees, appointment of various professionals to run the company during insolvency process is very difficult task. So IBBI has come out with a circular, as well as they have already provided in the provisions of the code that how much and in what way the cost should be charged. But while handling the case, there is a conflict between committee of creditors as well as with all the stakeholders. When IRP is trying to justify, he has to put up papers that this is the information which contains that this is what we have incurred and whether this cost is justifiable or not. Let me just give you an example. If a company which undergoes insolvency and it doesn't have any operations, it is not having any asset. Now all the creditors who are waiting for something, that at least something should be realized, the corporate insolvency process should either revive or they should get some benefit out of it. Practically, what happens when company doesn't have any asset, any running operations, creditors also feel that how to bear this cost. This is another question that comes before insolvency professional. They have to run the process and bear lot of expenses which form part of CIRP cost. So such type of litigations used to come before Honorable NCLT, as well as this is looked into by the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, and we will proceed that what are the provisions contained in the code. This section 5 subsection 13 clearly mentions that the amount of interim finance. Now let me just tell you about that, what is the interim finance means. That when company is in the hands of insolvency professional, he has to, because company is under stress. When company goes into insolvency, it is under stress. So what they need? They need funds for running the company. So such type of interim finance which is required has to be arranged by insolvency professional or by the committee of creditors or by mutual understanding, that how the funds can be arranged. So this is the first part of interim finance and cost incurred in raising the interim finance. All cost connected to interim finance becomes part of corporate insolvency resolution cost. Basically, it is the cost which is incurred during the process. No any expense incurred to run the process smoothly is cost of insolvency proceedings. So such cost is to be borne by, initially who will bear the cost? That committee of creditor has to bear that cost. If it goes beyond committee of creditors, that suppose initially this interim resolution professional will get this cost from the applicant, who is filing this petition in NCLT. After that, once the petition is filed, this cost is to be borne by the committee of creditors after when the committee of creditors is formed. But committee of creditor will also charge this cost from the corporate debtor. So such type of process is laid down that any insolvency proceeding which goes, that the cost will be borne by the corporate debtor. Let me just come to the next point in section 5 subsection 13, interim finance, the fees payable to the person acting as a resolution professional. Whatever fees, normally resolution professional when appointed, he needs fees for running the process. He is the only person who is becoming CEO of the company. The board of directors are terminated, the board is terminated. Now all the powers are vested with insolvency professional. Practically, when suppose a company which comes to the hands of the insolvency professional, which does not have any asset, any source of money, and he is devoting his time, he should be compensated. Who will compensate him? That is, committee of creditors has to facilitate payment and remuneration to insolvency professional. All costs incurred by the resolution professional in running the business of the corporate debtor as a going concern. Means you have to run the company as a going concern. You cannot hamper, because the risk of running a company is very, very important. A company which is run in profit unfortunately enters into insolvency process. Now if you, as an insolvency professional, the board of director by virtue of law is suspended, insolvency professional comes as a chief executive of the company, CEO of the company. If suppose production stops, operations stop, and that cause a loss to the company, who will bear this loss? So insolvency professional has to be very careful. He has to run the operations of the company to keep the company as a going concern. As it was earlier, it should go as it is now during the insolvency resolution process. Any cost incurred at the expense of the government to facilitate insolvency resolution process. If government is bearing any cost, that cost is also required to be forming part of insolvency resolution process cost. Any other cost as may be specified by the board of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. So if something is ambiguous, some costs are supposed to be specified by the board by notifying, and that will form part of insolvency resolution process cost. Section 208 subsection 2 of the code is very, very relevant while talking about this particular cost aspects. Every insolvency professional shall abide by the code of conduct. The code of conduct has been prescribed by under the law that he has to abide, maintain excellence, and work to the best of his efforts, and he should be under code of conduct, he has to be very careful while handling the process, because things are very, very sensitive in nature, and if he is not to that extent satisfying the need of the process, any risk may come on his head. So basically, to comply with the requirements of the terms and conditions specified in the bylaws of the insolvency professional agency of which he is a member, he has to comply with all the requirements to allow the insolvency professional agency to inspect the records. At any point of time, insolvency professional agency, basically it is an agency, IPAs. IPAs are facilitated as a facilitator to Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board, which is regulator of the insolvency professional, as well as insolvency professional agencies. So he has to allow whatever records he has at any point of time. Any IPA can come and inspect the documents. So it is his duty under code of conduct that he has to allow insolvency professional agency that whatever records he has for any clarification or any confusion, he should provide those records to the agency. To submit a copy of all records of every proceeding before the adjudicating authority to the board as well as to the insolvency professional agency of which he is a member. So insolvency professional has to be very careful to see that whatever proceedings are going on in NCLT, NCLT, or wherever related to proceedings, insolvency resolution process, he has to keep all those information, and any point of time insolvency and bankruptcy board or IPA, anyone can ask for information that please provide this information so that they can facilitate the stakeholders. They can also provide information to various agencies if required. So he should be ready that all the time he must provide such information to the board regarding proceedings of the case to perform his function in such a manner and subject to such conditions as may be prescribed. So the law, it emerged in 2016. It is a very young law. So the process which has been already prescribed in insolvency and bankruptcy code for running the insolvency process, it is new. So regulations are already formed. Many regulations are coming out, new circulars, clarification orders, etc. are coming. So dynamic law changing as per the decisions in various courts. Courts means NCLT, NCLAT, and also even the matters are reaching to high courts and supreme courts. So IBBI is closely watching all those proceedings, that what is happening and what else is required. They accordingly present that some sort of clarification order, some sort of circulars, or any amendment is required. They take care of that amendment, and accordingly the amendments are made through Parliament. This insolvency professionals regulation, IBBI regulation 16 talks, an insolvency professional must ensure that he maintains written records for any decision taken. What is the purpose of this regulation? The purpose is very clear. If you are not keeping proper records and proceedings have been done, you have already proceeded with the insolvency process. Let me tell you, there are different stages of insolvency process. As IRP, you have to conduct, you have to invite claims, public announcement, you have to create a committee of creditors, file constitution of committee of creditors to NCLT. Then you have to conduct COC meeting agenda and minutes as per the law must be done by the professional. So all these records of the proceedings which he is doing as an extended arm of the court, NCLT, he is supposed to work as an officer of the court. All proceedings he has to take care, and these proceedings records must be kept by him in detail and properly written, documented documents. And these documents, what is the purpose of these documents? These documents become an evidence under the code. So either at NCLT can be presented at any point of time for taking any decision by the court, or the same can be referred by Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India and IPS for reviewing any information or for looking into the whether the code has been followed, the law has been followed or not, or wherever there is any confusion or any kind of issue which has been coming before them, they can take care of that issue. And these records will help the person to inspect and form an opinion. The purpose is to form an opinion. So records must be kept by him. Regulation 25 talks about provide service for remuneration which he has charged in a transparent manner is a reasonable reflection of the work necessary and properly undertaken and is not inconsistent with the applicable regulations. What is the motive of this regulation 25? That whatever cost he is charging should be charged in a transparent manner. It should not be like you can charge informally. You cannot charge informally. You have to charge all the cost through COC. You must present the information before COC, Committee of Creditors, that this is the cost, this is the fees, this is the professionals, service providers, this is the goods that is purchased. So all those things, whatever cost you are incurring, must be handled in a transparent manner and should always be presented to the stakeholders. And during insolvency proceedings, stakeholders is Committee of Creditors. So wherever approvals are required, all the costs must be ratified by the Committee of Creditors. What is the meaning of ratification? If suppose I have incurred some cost, now I am going to Committee of Creditor. Committee of Creditor says, no, this is not the amount we will pay you. We were supposed to pay you only few thousands, not this much of amount. So there is a disagreement. To the extent that is ratified by the Committee of Creditors, approved by the Committee of Creditors, is normally approval is required in certain cases. Ratification is required where the cost has already been incurred by the insolvency professional, either as IRP or RP during the process. He can get it ratified. If COC is not ratifying or is not approving any cost, then the cost burden comes on the shoulder of the insolvency professional. Very tough situation. As a practicing professional, I have experienced in many cases that this kind of issues are always arising. Committee of Creditor says in many cases, if it is not a big organization, it is a small organization, funding, NBFCs, etc. They say how much you can recover from this process. Can we get the money back? If we get the money back, then only we will pay you. So such type of difficult situations that for any company which is under insolvency resolution process, no bank, no other funding is available, because it is normally they are treating it as a negative list company. It is under stress. So how the money will come back? But I am telling you, for motivating this factor, this insolvency funding, interim finance, has been taken as a CIRP cost. That in case of any funding which is arranged, has first priority to be paid back to the that party before you pay any other creditor. So such type of motivational thought process has been built in. The process and law is having those provisions. So interim finance, if you can arrange as an IRP or RP, that is fine, but in certain cases if it is not available, it cannot be arranged. Regulation 25A talks about the disclosure of fees. Basically, disclosure is required. Once you are charging any fee, whatever fee you have charged, the process is over, you are handing over the things. You must disclose all fees charged by insolvency professional, either as IRP, RP, liquidator, as well as any other fee which you have charged based on certain suggestive guidelines under a circular. There are indicative issues that this much of can be charged, this way it can be charged, time based can be charged. Under certain circumstances, overtime is used, because overtime means suppose there is an urgency in the case, you have to move to Mumbai from Delhi, you have to stay back there for 5 days or 10 days, your other works are hampering. Now for those 5 days, day and night work, RP can propose that I have worked too much, my team was staying there, my cost has increased, so time cost will also be more. So this way the time based cost, and in many other ways the cost, fixed cost per month basis and variable cost maybe on time basis. So different type of proportions are there, but all these costs of IRP as well as other parties who are involved in the process like service providers. IRP is appointing valuers, RP is appointing valuers, you are appointing forensic auditors, you are appointing any investigation agency, you are appointing a security agency, you are appointing so many agencies in the process. So all these will form as part of CIRP cost. But we must keep it in mind that all these things, whatever cost we have incurred, must be approved by the committee of creditors. So these disputes used to go to NCLT. We have seen even in few of my cases I have experienced that COC is not ready to pay. How to run the process? Very difficult situation. COC says that no recovery would be possible, so we are not ready to pay you anything. We'll talk about those examples also. Then regulation 26, it is a kind of misconduct issue that code of conduct has also brought in the process in the regulation, that insolvency professional shall not accept any fee or charges other than those which are disclosed. Means he cannot charge any other fees other than whatever he is disclosing. He has to disclose with the IPS, Insolvency Professional Agency, where he is registered, as well as he has to file a disclosure to IBBI also in case if it is required. There are certain forms. Regulation 27, which is also a part of code of conduct, an insolvency professional shall disclose all the cost towards insolvency resolution process cost, liquidation cost, or cost of bankruptcy process as applicable to all relevant stakeholders. See, not only you are disclosing to IPS and IBBI as your regulators, but you are also disclosing all costs to the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Committee of creditor is the approving agency, so you have to always approach committee of creditor for getting approval of all the expenses. You must all expenses should be approved and ratified. So wherever approval is required, you get it approved. Wherever ratification is required, that can be ratified. So many times COC, I have observed that COC doesn't take any decision on this cost part. No, we will not approve anything now. So how to run the process? So these conflicts are many times visible in the process, must be taken care of. This insolvency resolution process cost shall not include. What it shall not include? Any fee or other expenses not directly related to CIRP. Normally you are running as an insolvency professional the entire process of CIRP of a corporate debtor, a company. You incur some cost somewhere else and you charge it to the corporate debtor as a insolvency resolution process cost. No, that cost cannot be charged. Cost not related to CIRP will not form part of this cost. So many times irrelevant expenses should be segregated and should not be charged to the process. Who will do that? IRP must take his own steps to review that whatever actual cost is incurred related to CIRP should be charged. Any fee or other expenses beyond the amount approved by COC. If COC has not approved and approval is required, there are provisions that wherever approval of COC is required, you must take prior approval. Particularly, I can say interim finance. Raising of interim finance, you must take COC approval. If I am going to take money from outside, that you give me money for running the process, I will pay you interest 18%. Now, I cannot do that. I have to put up this matter, a proposal that we are raising interim finance at the rate of 18% to the extent of this much of amount. Are you ready? So many times COC says, you are bringing money at 18%. We are giving loans at 11%. Why you are taking money from outside at such a cost? No, we will not allow. So for wherever approval is required, IRP or RP has to take prior approval. Otherwise, he can do wherever he has to incur any cost, he must proceed. Where he has to keep the company as a going concern, corporate debtor as a going concern. The question is that you cannot run the process just by keeping the corporate debtor into a kind of situation that it incurs losses or it gets any abnormal loss during the process. All any fee or other expenses incurred before the commencement of CIRP or incurred after the completion of CIRP, means before commencement of CIRP, after completion of CIRP, this is not part of CIRP cost. All other expenses related to creditors, claimant, resolution applicant, means all stakeholders are before you. Somebody says there are decisions of NCLT also in many cases. In many cases where we have seen that such decisions are there, where the expenses are not allowed, which were incurred. In one of the case of Bhushan Power, I could have seen that committee of creditor has hired one big law firm and incurred around 14 crore rupees cost. The matter was brought into the notice of IBBI, and that cost, the order was passed to return that money, because any expenses incurred by any of the committee of creditors, member of the committee of creditor, any other member, or say any stakeholder, promoters, so those will not form part of CIRP cost. So RP should be careful in handling those situations, that somebody who is a stakeholder is asking you to charge this money to the CIRP cost. No, you cannot charge. You should not charge it. So these are certain items of COC etc. related. Then regulation 31 is talking about these costs, the amount of dues, various dues under various regulations. Regulation 32, regulation section 14(1) subsection D. This is the cost which is related to, I'll give you an example, like say if I rent out a building and that company goes into insolvency, my rent is stopped because of no funds, and now I'm saying that you vacate my building, but RP or IRP is not vacating the building. Now I am eligible for getting, due to moratorium my rights are affected. So this will also form as part of CIRP cost. Expenses incurred on or by the interim resolution professional to the extent ratified under regulation 33. Expenses, like there are certain expenses, so this I think I have already explained you. I can give you few examples of disclosure filing etc. Then there are few cases, workmen and employees who were asking that their wages and salary during the insolvency process must be a part of insolvency resolution process cost. The decision is in ABG Shipyard Limited, wages salaries of only those workmen who actually worked during the CIRP process. And another case was there, Smarty Buildtech Systems Private Limited versus Santosh Babu. COC is to pay the fee and cost incurred by IRP, who also acted during the resolution process beyond 30 days till the date of liquidation. There is also one of my case where I was appointed as IRP or RP, Reliance Commercial Finance Limited versus Noble Resourcing. It was a very strict order of NCLT that if the respondents fails to contribute CIRP cost as approved by COC, then their claim in the CIRP process would not be considered. It means, thank you very much with all this. Thank you very much.
Hello viewers and learners of the Postgraduate Diploma in Environmental and Occupational Health and Master of Arts in Environmental and Occupational Health. Welcome to this session. Today we will discuss about energy resources, which forms a part of the course MEV 001, that is Introduction to Environmental Health. Along with me we have expert Professor R. Bhaskar from the School of Sciences. Welcome to this session. And Professor B. Rupini, Professor from the Environmental Studies discipline, School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, IGNOU. So today we will discuss on the energy resources. Now India, if we see, we suffer from a chronic energy poverty. 300 million people are still, they have no access to the electricity. And there are still several more million people are dependent on the biomass gas or on other kind of the energy resources like cow dung and so on. So they still don't have the proper electricity supply. They still use kerosene and lanterns in order to light their homes. So therefore there is a severe energy poverty in our country. All this, these types of resources can cause a significant amount of indoor air pollution, and thereby that can also lead to the health resulted issues and the problems. Now India is largely dependent on coal, and if we see, coal meets more than 50% of the current commercial needs as well as 70% of our electricity. Therefore, the energy from the coal, this also, if we see, this comes at a huge environmental cost as well as the health cost. So having given a background on this, Professor Bhaskar, can you give our learners an account of the challenges and the issues that are there and related to the energy sector and the energy resources?
You have rightly mentioned that this is a serious issue, and this is a global and national issue. In fact, energy determines the development of a nation. You will be surprised, learners, to know that around 1 billion people do not have access to energy resources. Almost 40% of the world population do not have access to clean energy for cooking purposes. So you can see the problem, and the importance is any development requires a lot of energy, and that too, that is reliable, modern, and that can be energy efficient. So if you see sustainable energy, if you have, it generates opportunity, and then that can create well-being of the individuals, nation, as well as the economies. And if you see goal number 7 of sustainable development goal, this deals with energy access to all. This is a very critical issue, and it is a core component of the sustainable development agenda relating to the energy issues. Now this is the importance of that. Now if you see how do we address the issues, we have to see what is the current mix of energy we have in the world. We have around 15% energy mix as far as renewable energy is concerned, the global mix. It is very important to increase this. We have to increase the renewable energy content. And goal number 7 clearly states that it is important to have affordable, reliable, and modern energy services for all by 2030. This is a big target, and if economies have to prosper and societies have to be sustainable, then this agenda is to be met. Now, what are the strategies involved in achieving this? The first one is conservation of energy. That means moderation in use. Second is increasing the energy efficiency. Create devices which use less energy for more output for a small amount of input of energy. Third is cogeneration. Cogeneration means that they are designed in such a way that the waste which is released is used either to heat up some other substance rather than getting lost in water or in air. Now, designing energy mix is very, very important for any country. What is the 4 components which are involved in the energy mix? Any country decides its energy mix based on the social, political, economic, and environmental considerations. Different countries have different energy mix, and these are the 4 factors we should remember. For each country is different: economic, political, environment and social conditions. So every country decides its energy policy based on this mix. Some countries rely heavily on hydropower, some countries rely on nuclear energy, some countries rely on, for example, India, we have electricity 70% dependent on coal. So every country decides like this. Then if you see, non-renewable sources of energy are also there. Now, if there is a non-renewable source, that is the petroleum and coal.
So now that you have explained the issues and the challenges related to the energy resources, can you give our learners an account of the different types of the fossil fuels and why we say that these fossil fuels are non-renewable, and why should they be replaced also in the near future?
Very good. They are called non-renewable because on a human time scale, they cannot be replenished. When you say fossil fuel, you mean petroleum, coal and natural gas. And the current estimates, though there are different estimates based on number of factors, the coal and oil and natural gas will last for 51 years and coal will last for 114 years. Okay, and this is the current estimates. So fossil fuels are very useful because they have high calorific value, and transportation of these fuels using pipelines are easy, like oil and gas. Also, construction of power plants is easy using this technology. That is why this is important. Now when you come to coal, coal is nothing but the buried remains of the plants, and all coals are not of same type. They depend upon the type of plant which is buried and the rate of decomposition which has occurred. There are 4 type of coals which you know: lignite, subbituminous, bituminous and anthracite, and each of these coal has a different value. Now if you see the advantages of using coal, they are very simple. They are energy dense, they can be easily extracted, and low cost is involved, and it can be easily transported, and technology demands are small. What are the disadvantages? The main one is the carbon dioxide, the environmental consequences like climate change, then there is acid rain, all these things. Also coal powered plants have heavy metals, for example mercury, lead and arsenic are reported. Ash is left behind, and when you do the mining of coal, a lot of land is wasted in the process. So these are the disadvantages. Now when you come to natural gas, oil and petroleum fields, they naturally have natural gas in them, and almost you can have up to 80% to 95% methane in them. Now this is a clean fossil fuel, better than coal and petroleum. What is the advantage? It is less expensive than other fuels, and it is environmentally friendly fossil fuel, and it is extremely reliable, efficient storage. This is the advantage of this, and transportation is easy. Now there are some disadvantages. What are those? Being a gas, if you don't handle carefully, they can cause a lot of risk. Then second important thing is, because it is a gas, it occupies a lot of space. The storage is very, very expensive. Now if you come to petroleum, they are a mix of hydrocarbon, they are liquid, and they are normally formed from ocean microorganisms which have been buried millions of years ago. Now petroleum again has usefulness. What is the advantage? They can be easily transported, it can be used, it is energy dense, and it is cleaner as far as compared to coal. Now what are the limitations of this petrol? Certainly they are going to get exhausted soon. They contribute to environmental pollution. While refining, they release lot of toxic materials, and while transporting, they release oil. They can cause oil spills. For example, you can have ocean pollution due to oil spills. Massive oil spills have occurred. Now it is very important to understand that fossil fuels are not recommended. The reason being climate change. If you see the current IPCC report, we should not cross 2 degrees centigrade, and for that we should not use more than 20 to 30% of the fossil fuel reserves. If you see individually, if we want to maintain this less than 2 degrees centigrade by 2050, 80% of the coal, 50% of the gas and 30% of the oil reserves are unburnable. That means we are not to use it. Now Dr. Sushmita, I have explained about the fossil fuels and the importance, advantages and disadvantages. Maybe the learners may like to know about the renewable energy sources.
Thank you, Professor Bhaskar. So now we have understood about the non-renewable resources of the energy. So we have understood that there is a need for 100% transition from the non-renewable to the renewable or the alternate sources of energy. So already we are seeing that the carbon dioxide emissions, these are really high, and this emissions from the fossil fuels, this must actually end, and we do have to reach the net zero emissions, and only then we can keep we'll have a chance to keep the global warming below 1.5 or 2 degree and avoid the catastrophic climate change. So this means 100% transition is required for the developed countries maybe by 2035 and for the developing countries by the year 2050. So renewable electricity or a renewable electricity future. So we need a renewable electricity future that is affordable by everyone, that is accessible by all. And so we can actually create the renewable grids or the mini grid, and these mini grid will also promote several livelihoods. That is, it can benefit the livelihood of many people and the small businesses and the local entrepreneurs, and so they can also build their economies. Now let me explain this with the help of a small case study. The case study is the Ghats of the Himalayas. So these are actually traditional water mills, and they are used by centuries for people in the Himalayan region. Mainly you find them in Himachal Pradesh, in Kulu, then in Uttarakhand, and also in many places in the Jammu and Kashmir. So this is basically an indigenous technology, and that operates through the energy that is derived from flowing water that is actually falling from the glaciers, from the streams, and also from the rivulets. So in this figure you can see how these small streams also can be used for generating the energy. And then this energy can actually be used in order to grind for driving certain motors, for example for grinding the flour or the rice mill, or for the cotton or the wool weaving technologies, and so on. So in this figure you can actually see that this is actually a wooden shaft or a wooden turbine, and then they have the wooden or iron blades which are rotating when the water flows over it. And the shaft is connecting the wheel to a rotating stone which moves against a stationary grinding stone. So thereby the water from a stream is diverted through an open wooden channel, and then that falls from a height of about 8 meters onto the turbine, and it will then activate the system. So this energy then can be used for operating many of the simple machines. So there are several renewable sources of energy. Like we all know, we have the solar energy, we have the wind energy, the tidal energy, geothermal energy, and also the biomass energy. Solar energy, this we know that this comes from the power of the sun, and this is freely available. It is a free source of energy resource, and the amount of solar energy, this varies according to the position and the amount of sunlight that is received by several countries. So now if you see those countries which are nearer to the equator, they will be receiving more amount of the sunshine naturally. But those regions which are far away from the equator, then the geographical positions have to be inclined in such a way, that is the type of the solar photovoltaics that are being used, those cells that are being used, that need to go along the position of the sun so that they can capture the sunlight. Now traditionally, even in many ancient days, like if you see the Greece and many other places, they have been capturing the solar energy and light into their buildings, and they have been constructing their houses in such an environment friendly way in the direction of the sun, so that the sunlight enters the buildings. So in the same way, this can be used in several processes. For example, in the solar dryer, in the solar cooker, in the solar in agriculture and horticulture also. So solar energy can be used in many ways. I want to give one case study of Deba in Chhattisgarh. So this state has a fifth of all the solar powered villages in the country. And this, let me tell you, it is a boon to the residents who had always relied on the kerosene and the lamps for lighting their homes. So Deba is one of the 50 villages and the hamlets, and they are dotting the dense Barnavapra forest that is benefiting from the solar power plant by the remote village electrification program of the Union Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Here you can see these grids that have been constructed. So the advantages of solar energy: it is a clean power, it makes no sound, and this solar energy causes no pollution, and the cells make no noise, there is very little maintenance, and once one solar panel is installed, then the solar energy can be produced free of cost. Disadvantages: in the initial stages, the solar equipment is a bit costly in order to install, and then the solar power stations, they will not match the exact traditional or the conventional power station size, so they can also be very expensive to build the same. The next is the wind power. So we all know that even from the wind also we can harness the energy and the electricity. And the wind farms, these are increasingly a beautiful sight to see in several places in Germany. If you take a train ride, from Munich to Berlin, then you will see that there are so many of these wind farms. It's a worth watching scene. In the same way, in India and also in United Kingdom, now several wind farms are coming up, and there this renewable wind energy is being used. So here, to harness the electricity from the wind energy, the turbines are used in order to drive the generators, and then they feed this electricity into the grid. So a wind farm is basically a group of these windmills which are found in a cluster in a place, and a large wind farm, they may consist of several hundred individual wind turbines, and they are distributed over an extended area. Now in India, the state of Tamil Nadu and Gujarat, especially in Tamil Nadu, there is a lot of the wind and the open spaces also, and they have the highest installed wind capacity in the country. So we are home to 25% of the nation's wind power capacity. So India, it is planning to generate 500 gigawatts of the non-fossil energy by 2030, including 140 gigawatt of the wind power. And India's Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, they took out a policy framework in 2016 to encourage repowering initiatives and to make the wind resources more productive. The advantages: it is reliable, it is an infinite energy source, it is cost effective, few running costs when the turbines are running, and the offshore wind farms can take advantage of the wind flow without affecting the landscape view. There are few disadvantages because wind can be unpredictable, so the amount of energy generated, it depends upon the speed and the amount of the wind that is being generated. It can also damage the habitats of the wildlife and the marine life, and they are also expensive to construct. The last which I would like to focus is the tidal energy. So this is also another renewable energy which is powered by the natural rise and the fall of the ocean tides and the currents. And here the technologies include the turbines and the paddles. And there are tidal energy generators. These are mainly the tidal barrages, the tidal streams, and also tidal lagoons. The world's first tidal power station, this was constructed in 2007 at Strangford Lough in Northern Ireland. So Professor B. Rupani, now that we have got an understanding of the non-renewable sources and some of the renewable energy sources, can you explain to our learners some of the alternate energy resources which can be used?
Thank you, Dr. Sushmita. Learners, so far we have learned about the renewable as well as non-renewable energy resources. Now we have to see that what are the other alternative energy resources apart from these two. So just I would like to give some of the energy resources of alternative energy sources. The first one I would like to emphasize is on hydrogen. So everybody knows that hydrogen is most abundant element or abundant chemical on the universe. So here if you will see that hydrogen is having only one electron as well as one proton, and also if you will see that it is odorless and tasteless gas, and also it is highly combustible in nature. If you will see that hydrogen, how it will act as an alternative energy resource. So hydrogen as such, it cannot exist as an isolation. So we have to produce the hydrogen from the hydrogen containing molecules or hydrogen containing compounds. So how can we produce, or how can it will be generated from the hydrogen containing compounds? That is the most important issue. If you will look into the diagram, there are three types of energy resources, and then where we can harness this hydrogen as such hydrogen gas. The first one is the fossil fuel resource. So fossil fuel resource is one of the abundant and most usable resources. It is very low cost as well as the large scale hydrogen production. So here, if it is the fossil fuel resources, so far we have learnt about that it is non-renewable energy resource, fossil fuel. So fossil fuel energy is not an alternative energy resource, but how can we extract the hydrogen from the fossil fuels? If the fossil fuels, there are so many methods are also there. And the second one is, if fossil fuels, if we will extract the energy of the hydrogen or isolate the energy of the hydrogen, so if it is collaborated with the combination of carbon capture or utilization as well as the storage, that is a carbon sequestration. And the second one is the biomass waste. That is also one of the important source for the hydrogen generation. And the third one is the electrolysis, that is a splitting of hydrogen from water molecules. So these are the most important procedures to capture the hydrogen. If you will see that what are the production pathways of the hydrogen from these three sources, the most important alternative energy source for the hydrogen is the steam methane reforming. So it is that means the name indicates that the high temperature steam is interacted with the methane molecule. That means the high temperature steam is around 1300 to 1800 Fahrenheit and also 3 to 25 bar pressure. It will split the methane molecule into carbon as well as hydrogen and also byproducts into as the carbon monoxide and the very lesser quantity of the carbon dioxide. So this is most important, that the steam methane reforming is one of the main production of the hydrogen as such. And the second one is the electrolysis. The electrolysis name indicates that splitting of the molecule by using the electricity. So that means that any molecule, right, example the water molecule, especially the electrolysis is used for the molecule splitting of the water molecule. So it is a very clean energy. It will generate the hydrogen as such along with the oxygen. So it is a clean fuel. So here now the most important part is where the electricity will comes from, whether it is from the renewable energy source or non-renewable energy source. So here it is, if suppose, so that is why most of the governmental organizations as well as the industrialists, on the basis of the electricity which is used for the electrolysis process to generate the hydrogen, they are categorized the hydrogens as such with the color codes. The first one is, if suppose the electricity is generated from the non-renewable resources, then the hydrogen is call it as a brown hydrogen. If it is from the renewable energy sources, then it is call it as a gray hydrogen. So, and if suppose if it is from the nuclear power plant, then we can call it as a clean hydrogen. So these are the some of the names they have given. If suppose from the fossil fuels the hydrogen is generated, then we can call it as a brown hydrogen. If suppose it is combined with the carbon sequestration or the carbon storage, then we can call it as a blue hydrogen. And if it is from the nuclear power plant, the electricity is generated, then that sort of hydrogen is categorized as a pink hydrogen. So it depends upon the name of the categorization of the hydrogens. Anybody can understand that whether it is a clean fuel or any other side effects or the byproducts are there to pollute the environment. And the third one is the biological processes. In the biological processes, the hydrogen can also produced by the biological reactions from the microbes like bacteria as well as the microalgae. So this is also one of the most important pathway for the production of the hydrogen. And what are the applications of the hydrogen? That means what are the uses of hydrogen? There are many uses, especially in the European countries. They are utilizing the hydrogen as a fuel cell in the electric vehicles, light electric vehicles, while using this hydrogen as a fuel cell. And also it is used as a backup power and also portable power and also auxiliary power for trucks and specialty vehicles like for forklifts and the passenger as well as freight vehicles and cars and the trucks and also buses. And most important application, they are also already used as a hydrogen, a liquid hydrogen by the NASA. So in the especially aircrafts, the spacecrafts, they are using the liquid hydrogen in 1950s itself. So that is most important and then valuable advantage of this hydrogen. And what is the India's initiative? If we will see that 2020, Professor Bhaskar already emphasized on the Glasgow conference, India committed that we will go for the green hydrogen procedures. So that means they have to prioritize the sectors that have to use this green hydrogen as a fuel, but mandatory for some of the sectors like petroleum refineries as well as some of the pharmaceutical industries. And if you will see the nuclear energy, that is also one of the alternative energy. Here the nuclear power plants that produce the electricity from the heat which is created when atoms are splits within a nuclear reactor. So this is normally, this process is known as the fission. So what type of atoms that will be splitting in the nuclear fission? Normally uranium, they will be used radioactive metal. So there are three isotopes of the uranium are there, that is uranium 234, 235 as well as uranium 238. So but most importantly uranium 235 is used for the production of the clean electricity from the nuclear energy. And the third important point is that energy from the microorganisms. So all microorganisms are able to provide the energy or not? No. So only few of the microorganisms, that is in the process of the bioelectrochemical system, that is used as the microbial fuel cell, that is MFCs. So what type of microorganisms can generate electricity? So the first one is the geobacter. So normally it will produce that 3.9 watts per square meter energy they can be generated. And the second one is Schwanella. That is also one of the microorganism that can generate 4.4 watts per the square meter. So all these three, what we have discussed so far, are the alternative energy fuels other than the renewable as well as the non-renewable energy resources. Learners, so first I would like to conclude with that. So what type of energy resources we have to use? We have to harness, that is the aggressive expansion of nuclear energy as a substitute for the coal-based power. And the second one is solar power as a replacement of oil and gas. And the third one is higher proportion of reservoir of hydropower we have to use. And most important is we have to reduce our energy consumption for the regular needs.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Professor Bhaskar. Thank you, Professor Rupini. Thank you for your patient listening.
ताजमहल की तरह आगरा का पेठा भी दुनिया भर में मशहूर है। आगरा का पेठा अपनी मिठास के लिए दुनिया भर में जाना जाता है। आगरा आने वाले सैलानी पेठे की मिठास का लुत्फ उठाए बिना यहाँ से नहीं जाते। वैसे तो देश के कई दूसरे शहरों में भी पेठा बनाया जाता है, लेकिन आगरा का पेठा सबसे खास माना जाता है। आगरा में जगह जगह पेठे की दुकानें देखने को मिल जाती हैं। आगरा के पेठे की खासियत ये है कि इसे बनाने में घी या तेल का प्रयोग बिल्कुल नहीं किया जाता। पेठे का फल कद्दू के बराबर और लौकी के रंग का होता है। पेठा कई प्रकार का बनाया जाता है। सबसे ज्यादा सूखा पेठा बनाया जाता है। अंगूरी पेठा भी लोगों को काफी पसंद आता है। अंगूरी पेठा रस में डूबा रहता है, जबकि नारियल पेठा क्रश डालकर बनाया जाता है। समय के साथ साथ अब आगरा का पेठा भी आधुनिक हो गया। आजकल पान पेठा, केसर पेठा, पिस्ता पेठा के साथ साथ दर्जनों किस्म का पेठा बनाया जाने लगा है। पेठे को अनेकों रूप, आकार, रंग और साथ ही एसेंस मिलाकर भी बनाया जाने लगा है। अगर आप आगरा आएं तो पेठे का लुत्फ लेना बिल्कुल न भूलें।
प्रिय विद्यार्थियों और ज्ञान दर्शन से जुड़े हुए सभी दर्शकों को मेरा नमस्कार। मैं डॉक्टर राजवंती, हिंदी विभाग, मानविकी विद्यापीठ, आज आपके लिए लेकर आई हूँ अस्मिता मूलक विमर्श, स्त्री विमर्श की अवधारणा। स्त्री विमर्श की अवधारणा और अस्मिता, ये दोनों शब्द बहुत गहरे रूप से जुड़े हुए हैं। जब हम अस्मिता की बात करते हैं उसमें आता है हमारा वजूद, और जब हम बात करते हैं स्त्री विमर्श की तो उसमें आता है एक विमर्श। एक विमर्श की आवश्यकता क्यों पड़ी और एक विमर्श से क्या होता है? क्या विमर्श से समाज बदलता है? क्या विमर्श से मान्यताएं बदलती हैं? क्या विमर्श जो है वो समाज को प्रभावित करता है? और जब ये विमर्श साहित्य में हो तो इसकी प्रामाणिकता कितनी बढ़ जाती है? ऐसे ही मुद्दों से आज मैं आपको रूबरू करवाऊंगी और मैं आपके सामने एक ऐसा जो है प्रस्तुत करूंगी, एक ऐसी अवधारणा प्रस्तुत करूंगी कि स्त्री विमर्श आखिर है क्या। यह विषय आपको एकदम से जो है आपके जेहन में, आपके जो है लेखन में और आपकी मानसिकता में एकदम से साफ हो जाएगा। तो सबसे पहले हम बात करते हैं अस्मिता की। अस्मिता क्या होती है? अस्मिता किसे कहते हैं? एक इंसान को जो है या फिर समाज को या फिर जो विचार हैं उनकी अस्मिताएं कितनी मायने रखती हैं, इन सब बातों पर अगर हम गौर करें तो अस्मिता, मैं भी हूँ, मेरा भी वजूद है। अगर हम बात करते हैं साहित्य में तो आदिकाल, मध्यकाल, रीतिकाल और आधुनिक काल, इन चारों कालों में अगर हम बात कर रहे हैं स्त्री विमर्श की, तो अगर मैं आदिकाल की बात करती हूँ तो आदिकाल में जो है जितने भी लेखक हुए हैं, साहित्यकार हुए हैं, और जितनी भी जो चीज़ें हमें, अगर हम इतिहास को भी इसमें अगर हम जोड़ते हैं तो हम देखते हैं कि यत्र नार्यस्तु पूजन्ते रमन्ते तत्र देवता से लेकर एक जो बताया गया है कि किस प्रकार से जो है उस समय कहा, कई बार जो है वेदों की अगर हम बात करते हैं तो उसमें कहा है कि अगर एक नारी के कान में जो है वेद का मंत्र चला जाए तो उसे क्या है, उसे उसके कानों में जो है पिघला हुआ शीशा डाल देना चाहिए। ऐसी कई तरह की चीज़ें हमें पढ़ने को मिलती हैं, सुनने को मिलती हैं। उसके बावजूद भी हमें जो है बहुत सी विदुषियों के नाम भी मिलते हैं। थेरी गाथाओं में हमें मिलता है कि किस प्रकार से जो है महिलाएं अपने वजूद की बात करती थी, किस प्रकार से आज भी जो है अगर हम देखते हैं तो कोई भी ऐसा क्षेत्र नहीं है चाहे वो आदिकाल रहा हो, चाहे मध्यकाल, चाहे रीतिकाल, चाहे आधुनिक काल, जहाँ स्त्री ने अपनी बात नहीं रखी हो। अगर हम बात करते हैं मीराबाई की, अगर भक्ति काल में अगर मीराबाई की बात करते हैं तो मीराबाई जो है वो स्त्री आंदोलन या स्त्री मुक्ति या फिर स्त्री का जो वजूद है उसकी अवधारणा को स्पष्ट करने वाले जो तथ्य हैं उसमें प्रमुख नजर आती है। कौन है मीरा, क्या है मीरा का वजूद, कैसे मीरा ने उस समय एक राजपूत घराने की होते हुए जो है उसने विद्रोह किया, किसी राजघराने की होते हुए वो साधुओं के बीच में बैठ के गायन कर रही है, गा रही है, वो इकतारा लेके गा रही है, लोग जो है और आके लोग बोल रहे हैं कि आप इतने बड़े घराने की, कुलीन घराने की बहू जो है वो साधुओं के बीच में बैठ के जो है गायन कर रही है, वो गा रही है। ये कैसा है, इतने पुरुषों के बीच में अकेली महिला? लेकिन मीरा ने विरोध किया, मीरा ने अपने वजूद को रखा। मीरा का जो प्रेम है वह जो है एक निश्चल निष्पाक प्रेम है। और क्या लगता है कि मीराबाई को जो है जब जहर का प्याला दिया गया होगा तो क्या जहर का अमृत बन गया? क्या ऐसा संभव है? या कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं हुआ कि जब मीरा को जो जहर का प्याला देने के लिए जो जिस दासी को भेजा गया उसके मन में ये बात आई कि यार ये तो बावरी है, भोली है, पागल है, ये तो कृष्ण के प्रेम में जो है वो डूबी हुई है, इसे तो पता ही नहीं है, और हो सकता है उसने प्याला बदल दिया हो। यानी कि मीरा अपने वजूद के माध्यम से स्पष्ट कर रही है कि मेरा भी एक अपना अस्तित्व है, मेरा भी एक अपना वजूद है। इसी प्रकार से अगर हम बात करते हैं सहजोबाई की, भक्ति जो संत है सहजोबाई ने जो है उनका जो लेखन है, उनका जो भक्ति है, उनका जो प्रेम है वो साहित्य में है। उसके बाद जो है अगर हम बात करेंगे रीतिकाल में, तो रीतिकाल में जो है नारी को एक वस्तु के रूप में देखा गया। उसके पूरे जो उसका जो अक्ष है उसको जो है उसी को जो है सारी चीज़ें उसी के आधार पे चीज़ें मानी जाने लगी, और उसका जो प्रभाव है वो आज भी अगर हम मानते हैं तो सबसे नारी का जो भोग्य रूप है, नारी की छाई परत अंधा होत भुजंग, कबीरा तिन की क्या गति जो नित नारी के संग। यानी कि कैसे कैसे ढोल गवार शूद्र नारी ये सब ताड़न के अधिकारी। उसके बाद इस दोहे को जो है काफ़ी बदला गया और काफ़ी कहा गया कि इसका ये अर्थ नहीं है। यानी कि नारी को नर्क का द्वार कहा गया, और बहुत सा जो है आज तक हमने जो है इसके एक स्याह पक्ष की तरफ हमने जो है वो ज़्यादा हमने ध्यान दिया। लेकिन जब हम इसके उजले पक्ष की बात करते हैं तो मातृत्व, एक जो माँ का जो रूप है नारी का, वो सदा से वंदनीय रहा है। एक माँ जो है वो अपनी संतान के लिए एक पल भी नहीं लगाती है, एक पल भी नहीं लगाती है कि वो अपने बच्चे को बचा ले और उसका यानी कि उसका बच्चा सेफ रहना चाहिए। माँ के जिस वंदनीय रूप को आज भी हम साहित्य में देखते हैं, चाहे वो कविता के माध्यम से, चाहे वो उपन्यासों के माध्यम से, चाहे वो कहानियों के माध्यम से, वो बहुत ही वंदनीय रहा है। आज हम बात कर रहे थे स्त्री विमर्श, यानी कि स्त्रियों ने कब विमर्श करना शुरू किया? जब वो पढ़ने लिखने लगी, जब वो उन्हें ज्ञान हुआ। शोषण किसका होता है? जिसे कम ज्ञान हो, यानी कि जो ज़्यादा बुद्धिमान होगा वो अपने दिमाग से, अपनी बुद्धि का प्रयोग करके जो उससे कम बुद्धिमान होगा उसको वो अपने हिसाब से रखेगा। और ये सदियों से चला आ रहा है, या सदियों से चला आता रहा है, या सदियों से जो है इस चीज़ को इस प्रकार से रखा गया है कि जो है ये जो नारी का जो ये रूप है ये वंदनीय है। अगर हम बात करते हैं कि कौन सा रूप नारी का वंदनीय है, कौन सा जो है आज भी जो हमारे भारतीय जो समाज है उसमें जो है स्त्री को दोयम दर्जे का क्यों समझा जाता है, क्यों कहा जाता है, और इसके पीछे कारण क्या है और इसका निवारण क्या है? हम बात करेंगे समाधान पे। स्त्री विमर्श जो है वो समाधान पे बात करना चाहता है। वो महिलाएं जो है आज नहीं, मैं आज की बात नहीं कर रही हूँ, अगर हम देखते पूरे इतिहास को अगर हम उठाते हैं तो हमें बहुत से उदाहरण मिलेंगे। रजा सुल्तान, वहाँ से लेकर आज तक जो हमारी जो आज हर मोर्चे पर जो नारी है वो जो अपनी बात रख रही है वो वहीं की अनुगूंज है। और आज भी जो है अगर हम बात करते हैं स्त्री विमर्श के मुद्दों पे, लैंगिक असमानता, कि लिंग के आधार पर असमानता नहीं होनी चाहिए। लिंग के आधार पर असमानता जो है वो किसी भी प्रकार से जो है मान्य नहीं होगी। किसी भी कार्यस्थल पे आपको इस वजह से नहीं नकारा जाएगा कि आप स्त्री हैं। आपको जो है शिक्षा में जो है हर जो शिक्षित होने का जितना हक जो है पुरुष को है उतना ही स्त्री को है, और ये आज हो भी रहा है। ऐसा नहीं है कि ये नहीं हो रहा है। आज जो है समाज जो है वो हमारा जो भारतीय समाज है ये बदल चुका है। तो आज जो हम जिस स्त्री विमर्श की मैं बात करने के लिए आप सबके समक्ष उपस्थित हुई हूँ, वो स्त्री विमर्श जो है बाल विवाह, दहेज प्रथा और जो है अनमेल विवाह से होता हुआ जो है आज आ पहुँचता है स्त्री के वजूद पर। पहले संयुक्त परिवार होते थे। संयुक्त परिवार में जो है बहुत बड़ा परिवार होने के कारण सारा परिवार मिल के रहता था, और उसमें जो है अगर हम बात करते हैं परिवार के मुखिया की, तो परिवार के मुखिया के रूप में दादा नहीं, दादी ज़्यादा महत्वपूर्ण थी। आज भी जो भी हमारे सांस्कृतिक कार्यक्रम होते हैं उसमें जो है जो लोक गायन है उसमें जो है महिलाएं अपने मन की अभिव्यक्तियाँ कर रही हैं, अपनी जो सारी बातें हैं वो रख रही हैं। हर एक उनका जो भाव है वो गायन के माध्यम से अनपढ़ होते हुए भी अभिव्यक्त हुआ है, और पढ़ी लिखी होने के बाद उन्होंने कलम उठाना शुरू किया। अगर हम बात करते हैं साहित्य में, तो साहित्य में जो है बहुत सी ऐसी लेखिकाएं हुई हैं और हो रही हैं और आज भी हैं जो अपने लेखन के माध्यम से हर ज्वलंत मुद्दे पर चर्चा कर रही हैं। आज जो है स्त्री की जो है यौनिकता को लेकर सवाल उठ रहे हैं। ऐसी जो है कोई भी ऐसी जगह नहीं है जिस पे वो सवाल नहीं उठा रही है, या जो समाज के सामने नहीं रख रही है। अगर उसे समस्या होती है तो वो समस्या को रख रही है, और उस समस्या के समाधान भी हो रहे हैं। जिस भी क्षेत्र में, चाहे वो खेल का क्षेत्र हो, चाहे वो फिल्म जगत का क्षेत्र हो, चाहे वो शिक्षण का क्षेत्र हो, चाहे वो घर का जो है घर का की रसोई घर का भी क्यों ना क्षेत्र हो, आज हर जगह पे स्त्री जो है वो अपनी बात को रखने में सक्षम है। और ऐसा नहीं है कि पुरुष जो है उसका वो पुरुष को जो है कई बार हमें लगता है कि यहाँ पे जब स्त्री विमर्श की जब हम बात करते हैं तो पुरुष को एक खलनायक के रूप में प्रस्तुत किया जाता है, और पुरुष को जो खलनायक के रूप में प्रस्तुत किया जाता है उसमें जो है स्त्री ज़्यादातर जो है कटघरे में खड़े करने के लिए जो पुरुष होते हैं उसमें पिता और भाई तो कम, लेकिन पति और ससुराल पक्ष जो है वो ज़्यादा होता है। यानी कि बहुत सी ऐसी चीज़ें जो हैं आज हम समाज के सामने हम देखते हैं जिससे हमारे समाज में जो है असमानता है, और जिसके कारण क्या है कि जो है उस बहुत सी ऐसी सवाल करने के कारण और तर्क और कुतर्क, यानी कि आज जो मूल जो समस्या है वो परवरिश की समस्या है। पुरुष की जो परवरिश है और महिला की जो परवरिश है उसमें फ़र्क है, उसके संस्कारों में फ़र्क है, जिसके कारण जो है तालमेल नहीं होने की वजह से जो है वो सारी समस्याएं जो है वो जन्म लेती हैं। एक पुरुष की परवरिश इस तरीके से नहीं की जाती कि जैसे ही जो है जब बच्चा पैदा होगा तो वो उसको जो है उसकी सारा उस बच्चे को रखना, उसको जो है खाना खिलाना, उसके नियमित उसके कार्य करवाना, ऐसा पुरुष को नहीं सिखाया जाता है। और जिसके चलते क्या है कि वो इन सब चीज़ों में पारंगत नहीं होता है। एक मानसिकता बना दी जाती है, लड़का है क्या लड़कियों की तरह से रो रहा है, लड़कियों की तरह से रो रहा है, क्या तुमने चूड़ियाँ पहन रखी हैं। यानी कि ऐसे हमारे समाज में जो दृष्टांत प्रस्तुत किए जाते हैं जिसके चलते पुरुष का ईगो कि नहीं मैं लड़का हूँ, मैं नहीं रहूँगा, मैंने चूड़ियाँ नहीं पहनी है। यानी कि चूड़ियाँ कमजोरी का प्रतीक है। चूड़ियाँ किस चीज़ का प्रतीक बना दी है। समाज में ऐसे जो है कटाक्ष किए जाते हैं जिसके चलते जो है एक जो है माँ जो है वो अपने बच्चे को जो है जो परवरिश का जो अंतर है वो नहीं समझ पाती है, जिसके चलते जो है बहुत सी चीज़ें जो है ईगो प्रॉब्लम के चलते रिश्ते टूट जाते हैं। मनु भंडारी का उपन्यास आपका बंटी, अगर मैं बात करती हूँ आपके बंटी की, तो आपके बंटी में क्या है। एक स्त्री है जो पढ़ी लिखी है, सुशिक्षित है, आत्मनिर्भर है और सहनशील भी है और चरित्रवान भी है। उसके बावजूद भी जो है वो जो है उसका घर टूट जाता है। किस लिए? एक जो है कि अगर पुरुष जो है वो कर सकता है तो मैं क्यों नहीं कर सकती। अगर अगर हम बात करते हैं, जैसे कि हम कहते हैं कि अगर स्त्री विमर्श की जब हम बात करते हैं तो उसमें हम ये बात रखते हैं कि जो है अल्कोहल या जो भी चीज़ें होती हैं जो हम आधुनिकता का जिनको प्रतीक मानते हैं, जिनका सेवन पुरुष करते हैं और जिनके कारण क्या है कि पुरुषों को ज़्यादा कहा जाता है कि ये सारी चीज़ें करने के कारण जो है घर टूट रहे हैं, सारी चीज़ें हैं। जब वही कार्य जब स्त्री करती है तो वो सही थोड़ी हो गए। काम जो करते हैं, अगर मान लीजिए कि एक स्त्री जो है अगर वो ड्रिंक करती है या जिसको हम माना जाता है कि भाई ये चीज़ें गलत हैं, इन चीज़ों का विरोध होना चाहिए, जिसके कारण जो है सारी जो है पारिवारिक संरचनाएं टूट रही हैं, ये चीज़ें हैं जिनको जिसके कारण जो है यही कमियां पुरुष में हैं। जब पुरुष में वो कमियां हैं और महिला में भी अगर वही कमियां हैं तो महिला सही कैसे हुई? यहाँ मामला महिला और पुरुष का नहीं है, यहाँ पर मामला एक मानसिकता का है और वो मानसिकता है पितर सत्तात्मक मानसिकता। शकुन, आपका बंटी की शकुन क्या कहती है कि जो है कि जब वो शादी कर सकता है तो मैं क्यों नहीं करूं? उसे डॉक्टर साहब से कोई प्रेम नहीं था जिसके साथ उसकी शादी हुई, लेकिन अपने पति को ये दिखाने के लिए कि मैं भी कम नहीं हूं, वो शादी करती है और उसके बीच में पिसता है एक बच्चा, उसकी मासूमियत, जिसका मनु भंडारी ने बड़े ही मार्मिक ढंग से वर्णन किया है। इसी प्रकार से जब हम देखते हैं प्रभा खेतान की अन्या से अनन्या को, एक लड़की है, अंधभक्त है वो, और उसने ठान लिया है कि वो जो है बचपन में जो है उसका जो है वो का मारवाड़ी परिवार में जन्मी है वो, और बचपन से ही जो है उसको उपेक्षित रखा गया है, उसका रंग सांवला है। और दूसरी जो है वो जो उसकी बहन है जिसको जो है उसका गोरा रंग है, जिसके कारण उसको अहमियत मिली है। और वो क्या करती है कि वो जब एक क्लिनिक में अपनी आंखें दिखाने के लिए जाती है और डॉक्टर से जो है जो उसकी आंखें चेक करता है तो डॉक्टर उसकी आंखों की तारीफ करता है कि कितनी खूबसूरत हैं तुम्हारी आंखें, और वो कायल हो जाती है, उसको आंखों की सुंदरता से प्रभावित हो, यानी कि डॉक्टर ने तारीफ की और आप खुश हो गए। खुश ही नहीं होती है, वो जो है एक 18 साल बड़े पुरुष के साथ पूरा जीवन गुजार देती है, 30 साल तक वो रहती है। बाद में शुरू में जो है एक उन्माद और ऊर्जा, दोनों में बड़ा गहरा फर्क है। उन्माद यानी कि वो जो है वो इसी को संकल्प ले चुकी है, पढ़ी लिखी, सुशिक्षित, आत्मनिर्भर और खूब अच्छी बिजनेसमैन, और जो है एक सशक्त महिला होने के बावजूद भी वो एक ऐसे पुरुष के लिए जिंदगी भर रोती बिसुरती नजर आती है, जो क्या है कि जिससे उसे पहला प्रेम हो जाता है। कौन सी भावुकता! यानी कि हम जहाँ स्त्री विमर्श की बात कर रहे हैं तो क्या हम स्त्री पे बात कर रहे हैं, उसकी भावनाओं पे हम बात कर रहे हैं? ठीक है, आर्थिक गुलामी से मुक्ति बिल्कुल होनी चाहिए, सांस्कृतिक जो चीज़ें हैं उनसे भी जो गलत चीज़ है उसका विरोध होना चाहिए, उसमें चाहे कोई भी हो। लेकिन जब वो भावुकतावश नहीं है, दिल मेरा आत्मकथा में कहती हैं कि जो है उनको जो है एक बार नहीं, 2 बार नहीं, 3 बार भी उनको प्रेम हुआ। कौन सा प्रेम है? कौन सी प्रेम की अभिव्यक्तियों की हम बात कर रहे हैं? साहित्य जगत में भी अगर हम बात करते हैं आदर्श की, अगर हम बात करते हैं यथार्थ की, अगर हम बात करते हैं भारतीयता की, और अगर हम बात करते हैं भारतीय शिक्षित नारी की, तो ये सारी चीज़ें जो हैं ये जुड़ी हुई हैं, ये सारी मान्यताएं जुड़ी हुई हैं स्त्री की अस्मिता से। अगर आपका बच्चा जब आप पैदा होता है तो अगर आप उसे संतान समझते हैं तब वो बच्चा जो है उसका जीवन सार्थक होता है। आप जब तक उसे बेटा बेटी की जो मान्यताएं हैं अगर हम उसमें जो है ढालते रहेंगे तब तक जो है समाज नहीं बदलेगा। समाज कहाँ से बदलेगा? समाज हमारे अपने आप से बदलेगा, समाज हमारे अपने वजूद से बदलेगा। हाँ, हमें अपनी पहचान होनी चाहिए, लेकिन हमारे अंदर इतना विवेक भी होना चाहिए कि क्या हम जो कर रहे हैं वो सही है, क्या हम जो जिस रास्ते पर जा रहे हैं वो रास्ता सही है, या हम ही सही हैं, ये जिद है। अगर हम ही सही हैं तो ये चीज़ जो है वो चाहे स्त्री हो चाहे पुरुष हो, स्त्री को अपनी बुद्धि उठानी चाहिए, बिल्कुल उठानी चाहिए, उसे गलत चीज़ का विरोध करना चाहिए, हर हाल में करना चाहिए, उसे शोषण बर्दाश्त नहीं करना चाहिए, लेकिन उसे शोषक भी नहीं बनना चाहिए। उसे अपनी ये चीज़ उसे साफ होनी चाहिए कि जो वो कर रही है क्या वो सही है। और इसी मुद्दे को लेकर आज स्त्री जो है लिख रही है, हर चीज़ को वो कविता के माध्यम से, उपन्यासों के माध्यम से, निबंधों के माध्यम से, कहानियों के माध्यम से अपनी अभिव्यक्तियाँ दे रही है। और जिसके चलते आज ये चीज़ें जो हैं आज हमारे समाज के सामने छोटी छोटी चीज़ें सामने आ रही हैं। आज एक पिता भी अपनी बच्ची के लिए पैड खरीद रहा है, इससे बड़ी और जो है क्यों नहीं। आज जो है हम देखते हैं कि पूरा जो समाज है उसका एक देखने का नज़रिया बदला है। वो आज उसकी बेटी उसके लिए सिर्फ बेटी नहीं है, आज उसकी बेटी उसके लिए पूरी संपत्ति है। और जब एक ऐसे समाज में हम जहाँ जी रहे हैं, ये नहीं है कि ये एक जो मैंने आपको दिखाया ये एक अक्ष है, एक विजन है, और जिसके चलते आज जो है हर जगह पे, हर मोर्चे पर भले ही कम लेकिन महिलाएं हैं। नारी तुम केवल सरदा हो, विश्वास रजत नग पकदल में, पीयूष सरोत सी बहा करो जीवन के सुंदर समतल में। कौन कहता है कि स्त्री का कोई, क्या कहते हैं कि भाई स्त्री जो है ससुराल, जब मायके से जाती है ससुराल, तो ससुराल जो है वो उसका अपना घर नहीं है, और जब वो आती है मायका भी नहीं है, ससुराल भी नहीं है। आप ये क्यों नहीं सिखाते अपनी बेटियों को कि बेटा तुम्हें जो है अपना घर खुद बनाना है, तुम क्यों नहीं अपना साम्राज्य स्थापित कर सकती हो, तुम क्यों नहीं अपना घर खुद बना सकती हो। इस तरीके से जब हम परवरिश करेंगे तो स्वाभाविक रूप से समाज बदलेगा। कैसे नहीं बदलेगा? एक पिता जो है जब अपनी बेटी से नज़र मिलाए तो उसे अपनी बेटी पे फक्र होना चाहिए, और वो तब होगा जब वह उसे उस रूप में उसकी परवरिश करेगा। मेन जो मुद्दा है वो परवरिश का है, और जब हर पिता अपनी बेटी को वो परवरिश देगा तो समाज में कैसे बदलाव नहीं होगा। हर बेटे को एक बेटी की इज्जत करना जब सिखाया जाएगा तो स्त्री विमर्श के जो मूल्य हैं वो कैसे सिद्ध नहीं होंगे। समस्याएं हैं आज भी, जो है पूरी जितनी भी पूरी धरा है उसका जो है सिर्फ 1/3 हिस्सा ही स्त्री के नाम है। क्यों? क्योंकि अर्थ महत्वपूर्ण है। वारिस के लिए जो है संतान जो है, अगर मान लीजिए कि संतान बेटी है तब भी दूसरे, जैसे मैत्री पुष्पा ने अपनी आत्मकथा में लिखा है कि किस प्रकार से जो है कि वो इकलौती संतान थी, उसके बावजूद जब वो गांव जाती हैं, अपने घर जाती हैं, तो उनकी ज़मीन के ऊपर जो है किस प्रकार से दूसरे लोग जो है कब्जा करने की फिराक में रहते हैं। यानी कि अगर हम एक सुंदर, स्वस्थ और सशक्त भारत चाहते हैं तो जो है बेटियों को वो परवरिश देनी ही होगी। सिर्फ बेटियों को नहीं, बेटों को भी वो परवरिश देनी होगी। तभी स्त्री विमर्श के मुद्दे, स्त्री विमर्श की अवधारणाएं और स्त्री विमर्श जो है वो सार्थक हो पाएगा। झंडे लेने से नहीं, अपनी बात रखने से। और अपनी बात रखने का तरीका जब सशक्त होगा, साफ होगा और उसमें मजबूती होगी और दृढ़ संकल्प होगा, तो किस प्रकार से जो है वो स्त्री विमर्श जो है वो सार्थक नहीं होगा। आज स्त्री जो बात कर रही है उसकी बात को जो है अब सुनना ही होगा, और सुना जा भी रहा है। अपनी बुलंदी के लिए वो लड़ रही है और अपने आप को वो बुलंद कर रही है, इस बात में कोई दो राय नहीं है। और इसका एक सुंदर अक्ष आज साहित्य के माध्यम से समाज के सामने जो है वो है, चाहे वो मीरा हो, सहजोबाई हो, मनु भंडारी हो, रमणिका गुप्ता हो, प्रभा खेतान हो, या फिर जो है पद्मा सचदेव हो, सुशीला टागभोरे हो, सुशीला राय हो, कोई भी लेखिका हो, मैत्री पुष्पा हो, हर जो है सशक्त जो है लेखिका, हर संपूर्ण जो साहित्य है उसमें अगर हम देखते हैं तो ऐसी जो लेखिकाएं हैं वो समाज के सामने एक नया अक्ष प्रस्तुत कर रही हैं, और इस नए अक्ष से एक नया भारत झांक रहा है, नई जो है एक कोना झांक रहा है, एक नया संसार जो है वो झांक रहा है, और एक नए उजाले की तरफ हम लोग जा रहे हैं। और उस उजाले में, उस रोशनी में जो दिखाई दे रहा है वो एक ऐसी छवि दिखाई दे रही है जो बहुत ही मनोहर और खुशनुमा है। और आने वाले समय में आप देखिएगा, आने वाला जो वक्त है वो किस प्रकार से जो है इस लैंगिक असमानता को मिटाएगा, और हमें ये कहने की ज़रूरत ही नहीं पड़ेगी कि बेटा बेटी एक समान, या फिर बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ, हमें कहने की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ेगी, और एक ऐसा सशक्त और मजबूत भारत हम बनाएंगे। और इसी के साथ ही मैं आप लोगों से विदा लेना चाहूँगी, और अगले जो है एक नए विषय के साथ कल मैं आपको मिलूँगी, एक नई आत्मकथा के साथ, एक नए स्त्री के जीवन के साथ आप लोगों से इसी समय मेरी मुलाकात होगी। तो आप सबको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद और सभी को नमस्कार। मैं डॉक्टर राजवंती, हिंदी विभाग, मानविकी विद्यापीठ।